All right, we have the man, Coach Ford, now the head coach, University of Idaho. Coach, thanks for coming back.
Yeah, you bet. Thanks for having me again. Good to see you again, Coach.
Oh yeah, you're the man. You're a positive guy. You're just the man. So I was like, I got to get him back. You're the man. So last time I talked to you, you were at Oregon State, big time running back coach there, and then the head coaching job opened up at Idaho. I remember texting you like, "Hey, you think you're going to go back?" And you were like secretly like, "Yeah, I think I'm in the finalist a little bit." Then you got it. So you used to coach there. What was it like going back going back home, essentially, like going back to a place that you were at before?
Yeah, I think that made the transition super easy, right? Just knowing everyone here, the administration, much of the administration is the same. I know all the processes and just how things work here at the University of Idaho. So I thought transition wise, it made it really simple, probably the smoothest transition of any of I've had throughout my career, which was nice. Family getting back to a place they're familiar with was good as well. And, my kids kind of, had some built-in friends, which I thought was really cool.
Yeah, that's awesome. So you coached at the University of Idaho. It's a place that um, kind of started to figure it out, right? That had some success winning games, FCS level playoff contender, stuff like that. So what's it like going to a place? Obviously, you've been there, but it's a place that kind of just adding another wall to the house, essentially. Like you don't have to rebuild the house; it's kind of set there. Um, did that relieve some stress, obviously, because you know there, but then obviously coming in knowing they know what winning games is like, they know what competing is like. Was that like less stress coming back to that place because of that?
No question. The first time, well, the first two times actually that I had opportunities to be a head coach, those were not even. There was no walls. There was no foundation. It was like a hole, literally a hole in the dirt, inheriting those programs and really having to truly start over. Where here it was not so much like that. So much familiarity with the players, with everybody on the roster, really close relationships with a lot of those guys. So that certainly made it's just so much easier to transition and take over something where you feel like you can be competitive right away.
Right, right. Um, so of course you've been there. Being an Oregon State, Division One, little more resources, I would assume. Since you kind of been at Idaho, when you took over as head coach, were you like, oh, I have to readapt myself to maybe not having what they had and tweak some things there, or was it, I already know what this is?
Not really, because I mean, Idaho is in terms of comparing to Oregon State, certainly we don't have as nice of facilities or some things like that. But relative to our level, I think we're really in great shape, right? We have great facilities for the FCS level and very competitive within the Big Sky Conference.
Mhm.
And so uh, I think Idaho has so much good, you didn't really think about the differences, right? It's just,
Right.
hey, this is what we've got to sell recruits, families, and we know that we have a great product that we can produce as a result. So I think the biggest thing was just getting the staff together. I think that was probably the craziest part about all of this. I kept one assistant, my offensive coordinator, Matt Linehan. He was the receivers coach at the time I was here as an assistant. And so, knowing Matt so well, that was a great opportunity to hire him. And I'm really excited that he wanted to stay at his alma mater. But then after that, we had to hire 9 position coaches.
Mm,
And so you're trying
yeah.
to do that during the holiday season in December. It's not always easy to get things going. And thank goodness for Zoom, right? I
Yeah.
think
Yeah.
that's one thing that really saved us was just being able to do work from wherever you were at and try to get schedules matched up to get guys on interviews. But once we got that staff hired, like you said, I kind of knew what I was getting into here. I do think we have really nice facilities at our level of football, and it was going to be a situation where I knew we could recruit and most importantly retain. Keep these guys here in Moscow.
Yeah. I've never been to Idaho, but I've seen the pictures and a couple games with the field and like it's indoors and everything like that. I'm like, this looks awesome because it's indoors. And I have to imagine because it's indoors, that place can get pretty loud
Yes.
there with everything.
Yeah, the Kiwi Dome is electric atmosphere. I've coached at a lot of places. Been fortunate enough to, I think we coached at Michigan when there was 108,000 people there. But
Hmm.
just the way the acoustics work in this dome, I mean, you couldn't tell me it was that much, that much louder there, right? Like the Kiwi Dome gets pretty crazy, and we have great fans. I think our vandalizer crew, our student section has really been great, and we're continuing to make sure that that thing's sold out every week. We got six guaranteed this year, so really excited about our home slate.
And then that was kind of where I was going with next is with how college football has changed. Obviously, I know I have a relationship with some FCS coaches. I know 2 years ago they were like, "Hey, this hasn't affected us too much," at the FCS level. But now talking to them this year, they're like, "It's affected us a little bit," with high school recruiting. It's affected us with our guys leaving now, and now we have to plug from the portal. So when you get there as a head coach, what's it like to try to retain because they now can just go? What's that process like of trying to keep as many as you can and evaluate them and then maybe say if a kid goes, maybe you're like not too upset about it, right? Like, hey, you can go, but what's that kind of like for a new head coach?
Well, I think everyone's case by case. Individual situations are definitely different. There are some kids that even if it's a little bit of NIL money, it could really help their family. And so
Mhm.
I always want to make sure you take care of the kid first. But at the end of the day, for us, when we got back and there was guys that were in the portal and had not made commitments to other schools yet, my big push was finish what you started, right? And
Mhm.
a lot of those guys knew me well. Outside of Coach Eck here at Idaho, they heard from me the most being the special teams guy, and,
Mhm.
and so I think they kind of knew what I was about in terms of my mentality and how competitive I am and how I'm going to really push guys to get the best out of them. It was pretty easy to talk a lot of those guys into coming back, right? Because they love Moscow. They love the bonds they've made here. They know we do have, like I said, we have all the resources available for them to be successful, and so I think that part of it was fun, but it was challenging. But at the same time, I think once you got a hold of those guys and really talked to them at a one-on-one level, they wanted to be back. They just needed
Yeah.
a reason to be back.
Yeah. I couldn't imagine how busy you were, especially in December. Like I said, you had higher staff. Then you got to meet with all those players individually. Then you got to meet with all this stuff. Um, you've been a head coach before. What kind of made you feel like you wanted to do it again, go through all that, and just be a head coach? Because I know me personally, the longer I go, the more I'm like, be an assistant. I always, it's funny. I always, when something happens, I go, that sounds like a head coach problem. And I'll point him to the head coach. Like, it sounds like a
Sure.
him problem.
Well, I think it was very circumstantial. It's not like I was just in a hurry to take any head coaching job.
Hmm.
The position I had at Oregon State, worked with Coach Gunderson over there, Coach Bray, obviously as the head coach there. It was great. It was a great situation. I felt like we had a chance to win there. You could recruit there, so it wasn't like I was itching to get out by any stretch of the imagination. But the Idaho job is a little bit different, right? It's
Hmm.
again a job I feel like I have such great history with. I mean, I've been coming to school, or excuse me, when I was in high school. I've been coming out here since high school. I think the first year I ever came to Idaho football camp was like 1997 or something, and so just having this like these fond memories of this place and knowing what it can be and what Coach Eck really built it up to be. I really wanted to make sure that that could continue, and I knew that I was really going to be the right guy for the job, and so I think that was more this job, this being the job was more, hey, I want that job as opposed to I
Hmm.
just want to be a head coach, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Right. Yeah.
Hmm.
I think I just watched a thing with Scott Frost about his whole Nebraska thing. He was like, don't take a head job just because it's Nebraska. Like, he is glad to be back at Central Florida. He was like, I probably should never have left. He felt like that was it, but he made the jump because it was a big time thing. And so he's
Sure.
like, don't just take a job just to take the job because you'll make money to live no matter what job you have and stuff like that, especially at the FCS level and all that stuff. Man, 1997, coach, I was seven. I was 7 years
Yeah,
old.
I know. I aged myself there.
You look way
Yeah, my
younger
high
than
school.
that.
Yeah, my high school team would we came out here every summer from my sophomore year on, and it was like a ritual thing. You got into June and you were getting ready to drive from Seattle to Moscow and do a little team camp for 4 days or what I think it was three or 4 days. But it was always hot. There's no AC, but it was always a great time. And my younger brother played here. I ran track at in the Kibbe Dome when I was at Linfield. So I have a lot of really good memories of Moscow before I even became an assistant coach here back in 2022.
Okay, now it's all making more sense. You have a
Yeah,
lot of ties to Idaho. That makes a lot of sense. Especially not going there. Like a lot of people, it's
sure.
alma mater, but if you've got a lot of ties there, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, you just shocked me. I was like, "You're not 1997. You don't look that old, coach. You're not old. You don't look like
Don't let
it."
the young face fool you, coach.
Hey, mine's aging very quickly. People are like, "What? You're what? How old?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm not aging well because I coach all three sports: football, basketball, softball." So I was like, maybe that's why. Maybe I'm aging.
Sure, sure. Add a couple gray hairs for sure.
Oh, my beard's long right now because there's white hairs. As soon as I start seeing, I'm like, nope, it's gotta go. Especially when I took this OC job a few months ago, I've already aged very quick. Um, so when you're hiring a staff, what do you look for in your staff, right? Especially if you have to replace everybody, because I'm sure that outside of your OC, they all went with Coach Eck, to New Mexico and probably jumped. Um, what's that process like? And how do you trim it down? Because in this coaching world, we make a lot of connections. We keep a lot of tabs on people. How do you get that process going? And especially when it's December and some may still be playing, they may still be,
Sure.
or if kind of like you, maybe they're at a Division One level and you're trying to get them to come to an FCS level. Like, how does that? Which to me, I love FCS, so to me that's not a big deal. But to some, they might be like, "Why are you going down?" I'm like, "It's not down; it's great football." But
No
to
doubt.
some, it might be stepping down a little bit. So how does that go?
Well, I think to answer the first part of your question is, how do you kind of go about, finding the staff? I think first you got to have a really good pool of candidates, right? And I think our pools were great just because I don't think there's any shortage of guys that know about Idaho and the trajectory it's going.
Hmm.
So we had a lot of people interested in the job, and so I think in all of our pools, I had someone that I'd worked with before, but that wasn't necessarily the reason they were going to get hired, right? So
Right,
that was the first part, was getting a really good quality group of guys to interview, and then really the interview process was pretty. I don't want to say strenuous, but we really went in, and I really wanted guys that number one cared about kids, right? They had to have some type of history of building relationships and being able to work with kids from wherever, right? Wherever,
right,
whatever their background, right? And then I wanted guys that knew ball, right? There was a running backs guy interview that I thought I was going to hire, and I really liked him. And I knew him from before, and he I didn't feel comfortable with what he knew at that
right,
position, and so um, didn't hire him, right? And so again, guys that cared about kids, guys that really understood ball, and I think the last thing was just guys that worked hard. I didn't want guys that were necessarily fallen from grace, or had a bunch of opportunities and just were looking for the next thing. Just really looking for guys that were true grinders. Guys, a lot of that. You look at my staff, a lot of guys, coach small college football before having any opportunities at the Division One level, and so those were the type of things that we really wanted in our staff, and I think that's the type of stuff we want in our kids too, right? Guys that work really hard, guys that care about their academics and care about being a good dude, right? And so I
right,
think those are the things that I wanted in a coaching staff to make sure I have that in our players.
right. Um, that's an awesome answer because I think there's a lot of good Division Three, Division Two coaches that sometimes might get overlooked for things at the Division One level because they're going to say, "Oh, they never GA'd at Division One or whatever it was." Why? Why would that be a part of it? I have my reasonings as to why those people would be good choices, but why would you kind of look at it that way of looking at these other guys?
Yeah, I just think at the smaller school level, I've coached Division Three, Division Two, and you just have to do more, right? So you're kind of accustomed to taking stuff off the head coach's plate,
Right.
right? So I think traits like that are really they're really important, especially over the long term, right?
Uh huh.
Guys that are patient, guys that understand, lifting a little bit more than maybe they're used to. And then a lot of these guys also had a small college track that got them to Division I level jobs, which again just kind of illustrates that work ethic and never say quit type attitude, right? So
Right.
yeah, I feel really good about the staff we hired because of those reasons. And, we hired some really good people that we didn't hire too. So
Right.
it was an awesome process, but, overall, just really wanted guys that cared about kids, understood ball, and were grinders.
Yeah, I was in my head, I was thinking those guys, if you offered them a job, like if I'm a Division III coach, I interview with you and you offer it to me, I'd feel very appreciative of like, oh, this is my opportunity. And like you said, maybe not using you as a stepping stone, like within a year, if you guys have a successful season, which it looks like you will, of like, I'm moving on now. Like I have to go. Like, no, maybe their feet will stay more grounded from being at that level and appreciate I have this opportunity. Let me do everything I can. If I get a phone call for this different job and it's bigger time, yeah, but I'm not going to go looking for it. I'm not going to, because I compare it to the high school level. I've coached at small 1A in Illinois, 2A. Now I'm at 7A, a little bit more resources. And it's like, wow, I appreciate having a turf field. I
Sure.
appreciate, I appreciate that there's like two athletic directors you can go talk to and like all this stuff. I appreciate that instead of four coaches, we have nine or something like that, like, oh, I only have to coach on the offensive side of the ball. This is awesome. I don't have to do quarterbacks and turn around and do linebackers. This is awesome, and you have to appreciate that. And that's what I do now. Like, I appreciate that we don't have as much resources as other schools, but we have way more than where I have been. So
Right.
part of me's like, wait, your budget's how much here? Our budget was like $2,000. What's your stipend here? All right. Like, you have the resources. Just try to be where your feet are. And that's kind of what happened to me was I applied for like two head coaching jobs. But outside of that, I was like, it's because it's closer to home. So those were my reasonings. But outside of that, I was like, I'm not just going to interview for any job. I'm not going to go looking for any sort of job. If it's close to home, that's a personal reason. But outside of that, stay where I am
Sure.
and, and appreciate it.
Yeah.
Um, so you come in, staff, you talk to players, you're getting into spring ball. Transfer portals kind of now trickle down to FCS just a hair, recruiting. What does that look like now with FCS level, right? Like, do you guys have guys leaving? How often do you use the portal? Um, how does high school recruiting get affected? All those things.
Well, I think for us, our philosophy is pretty much going to be the same every year. We're going to replace the guys we need to, but we're always going to develop from high school players. I think our class is actually ranked pretty. Let me look it up really quick while we're on here.
Because I think you guys did pretty good.
Well, I just know we're recruiting our butts off right now, but we we've done a good job. I mean, I think yep, all Division I level we're ranked like 82nd. We're in really good shape as far as what we've got going. I think our coaches work incredibly hard in recruiting, right? And we did a really good job of again replacing the guys we needed to at mid-year, adding a couple of more of those pieces that we weren't able to get at mid-year because we know never want to just take guys just to take them, but we
Hmm.
want to take the right guys. And so we did a couple. I think we added like 5 or 6 more transfers in the summer, and then we're going to build it from the high school level. I think we have like 13 players committed, something like that, right now in the 2026 class. And so, yeah, I think, we just want to keep that mentality going, understanding that we'll have to replace guys and we're going
Hmm.
to use the portal to our advantage. It works both ways. But at the end of the day, we still want to really develop from the high school level.
Okay. Because I remember 2 years ago talking to like a couple. They said, hey, or they told me, they said, if this kid normally would have went Power 5 Division 1 with the portal, they don't go. So now it benefits the FCS level with high school recruiting. Like, hey, we
Which,
can,
yeah, which I completely agree with. I mean, you look at some of the guys that we've got, um, you know, committed on our list. We're getting some guys that had FBS offers, right?
yeah.
I think that's what has happened is roster numbers are slim. Guys might get early offers, and if they don't commit to them, or if they are committable, right, that might not even be the case. But let's say they are committable and they don't commit early enough, and those spots start, getting eaten up pretty quick. And so I think we do a really good job of just evaluating. We want to make sure that we trust our evaluation process. I know a lot of guys, high school coaches or trainers will say, Coach, he's got an offer from so and so, and I really couldn't care less, right?
Uh-huh.
Because I have no idea how school X, Y, or Z evaluates. And so we really have done a great job of trusting our evaluation process, building great relationships with these kids, and winning when we get them on official visits. I think we've had 14 official visits, and like I said, we have 13 commits, right?
That's awesome.
Only so far, only one kid that's visited has chosen another school, and we wished him well, right? He's a great kid, and but I think if you have a process and you really stick to that process, trust it, you're going to have a lot more success than chasing everybody else's.
Right, right. Um, I have a dumb question, and because I'm a dumb guy, so usually things come out pretty dumb. I'm a country boy, so things don't come out the right way. I'm a big Illinois fan. Obviously, I grew up right by University of Illinois. Their recruiting rankings keep improving. So I looked at it yesterday. They still rank them lower than I thought because they everything goes by 5 stars, right? Like, oh man, five
Sure.
stars they get. Illinois, I think, brought in 15 to 18 3 stars, which is awesome. Why do you think? I know a reason why there's 5 stars, but like, how much do those really mean, right? Like, obviously, you have your own process, but like, if you get 15 3 stars, that's still pretty good. They're ranked 3 stars for a reason, and they're still pretty good athletes, and you could develop them into that ultimate. So why does like 24/7 all them just like put all this emphasis on 5 stars and kind of overlook these 3 stars?
The stars don't matter, but they do, right? I
Yeah,
think what the stars truly are, I think people don't really realize what the true meaning of it originally was, but it's really trying to predict NFL potential, right? And think about how
yeah,
possible that is to do at the
yeah,
high school level. That's why you don't see very many 5 stars. 'Cause a 5 star looks different than a 3 star,
right,
right? But a 3 star can look really, really good.
yeah,
We've got 13 of them committed right now, and those guys are great players, right? They can play at the FBS level, and if they couldn't, they wouldn't have FBS offers, right? And so
yeah.
I think the difference between a 5 star and a 3 star is closer than you think, but it just looks a lot different, right? A
Okay,
5 star looks a lot different. He's probably going to have every measurable you can really possess, right? The
right.
length, the speed, the change of direction. Because again, the rankings, like I said, don't rankings don't matter, but they do, right?
Hmm.
Though, if you have more players that have potential NFL, talent on your roster, you probably should be good in college, but obviously it doesn't matter once you start playing. So
Well,
at the end of the day, that's like you said, if you can go get a class of a bunch of really good 3 star guys that end up being NFL players, I think you're in great shape. So that's why I always say the stars don't matter, but they do.
yeah, because how many 5 stars you see not pan out too, and they put all this, like you said, they're predicting, but then they get them, and let's say they find their way out of the starting lineup. You're like, well, how he was a 5 star recruit, but
Right.
I feel like you see more 3 stars. Not even talking NFL, have a better college success story of like their freshman year, they're a 3 star. They played they practice their butts off. They do this, do things the right way, and now they are like a 2 year starter, and the school has success. And yeah, I don't really look at them a lot, but yesterday I just decided to, and I was like, why are certain schools like I'm seeing these huge numbers? Like you said, if I were to look at Idaho, man, look at this 13 3 stars. That's a lot of players. But how they do the stupid rankings is, well, let's put them down here. We're like, well, no, it's still pretty good. Like it's
Sure.
still really good recruiting, in my opinion.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. And that's why, again, if programs really believe in their process, they normally have more success. I mean, there's a lot of, a million programs you can name off that have had that success. But um, again, I think if you trust your process and you're able to get a bunch of guys that you feel really good about, the rankings will matter a lot less when you actually have to coach them, right? Like
Yeah,
you still got
yeah,
to coach these guys up. And I think knowing what you really want in your schemes and within your position rooms is really important. I think the staffs that do it right trust that process and end up with really good classes.
yeah. Sorry, I know that was a stupid question, but I was just
No, not at all. Not at all.
I never really look at them. Like I'll pay attention to who people get, but I never really look at rankings and people put all this stock in, and I'm like, the only stock you want to put in is like for you guys, if next year your ranking goes up higher, you're doing your job, right? It's a process, like you just want to keep. But outside of that, I'm like, I don't look at the 5 stars. I don't even know. I don't know till they post it on Twitter, like, oh, this five
Sure.
star sign. I'm like, I didn't know he was I don't know.
Right. No, you're exactly right.
And that might be the high school coach in me, but I'm just like, I don't care. That's, but I get it. These people with journalism jobs and stuff, that's their job is to, I respect it. Um, oh, I was going to ask you a dumb question. So this is how you recruit. This is how you do things. I saw a video the other day of this guy talking on a show about these coaches just can't develop culture anymore because of how players just leave. Like the culture don't matter no more. And I'm sitting there thinking about this. And I'm like, I think it still does. I think it still matters. So for me, just saying that to you, what would your response be if you saw that? Like, hey, these head coaches just can't develop culture no more at college football because they can just leave.
Yeah, I'd say the bad ones can't, right? I think um, the good ones can, and then that's probably what separates the good from the bad. I truly believe that young people are seeking structure,
Yep.
and they want something to buy in to, but that something's got to be real for them. If they see you ask them to do stuff they're not, they know you're not willing to do, well, it's really hard to build culture, right?
Hmm.
If everything you're doing is transactional, every time you talk to them, it's about something that's related to football, and you never invest in them, or you never really go out of your way to build a relationship with them, then yeah, it's hard to build culture. But I think if you are able to do that, and you have a coaching staff that also believes in that, and you have players that actually enjoy being around each other, then you can certainly still build culture regardless of who's here, because those kids, and that's something I have seen here at Idaho. A lot of the guys at Idaho that I've got a chance to coach over the last, really 3 years. I know I wasn't here last year, but still coached those kids before last year. But then I've transferred to, FBS schools. We had 17 of them from our roster last year transferred to FBS schools. But those guys still talk to our guys, right? They're
Hmm.
still boys, right? Those guys are fired up about what we're doing. And so I think the culture does still matter, and that those relationships wouldn't exist without some type of culture being built.
Right. Right. I agree with that. I saw that video and I saw where that person was coming from, but I thought about it and I said, well, you still have your culture. Yeah, you have to change some things now if you're at that big time level. I think that's what people lose sight on is when people talk about that stuff, they're talking about your big time, what you see on ESPN all the time. Like my wife, for example, I said something about, oh yeah, look at Nick Saban. He was making this much money and blah, blah. And she looked at me and she goes, why didn't you go the college route? They're making all this money. And I said, well, whoa, 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 whoa. Let me tell you how much money they really make, like, and the process it takes to get there. And she goes,
Sure.
oh. And I said, yeah. So that's why today at 30, almost 35 years old, I'm not going to go be a GA. I'm sorry. It's not going to happen. I'm not going to go to, no offense. I'm not going Division 3 and like doing this. I said, unless you want to pay all the bills. And she was like, "Oh no, that's okay. Keep doing your thing. You keep doing it." Um, but I was like, "You have to change a little bit at that level." But I would think outside of what we see and read, especially like FCS. That's why I love FCS. There's still a cult, like a true, like almost old school culture. And if a kid leaves because they're really good and they get this opportunity, you thank them. You just next guy up, right? That's kind of, and that's your culture. Next guy up. If we're all doing our jobs and they're ready to go, we plug them in and they're ready to go.
No doubt.
That's just. But it was also probably a clickbait thing that I said. But it's
They always get you.
well, and it's on Twitter. Like you're just scrolling and I see a video and it's if it's college football, I look at it and I'm like, oh, that's an interesting take. Uh, I think like Brent Bielema at Illinois, I was like, I think he still has a culture. You just have to tweak it a little bit with this new world, but it's still a culture. Like it's still, and sometimes culture is not necessarily winning football games, which that's what you want to do, but it's like you said, building relationships. And if they like you enough, then they get an offer for money and they go, I'll still stay because I'm still getting name, image, and likeness money. I'll still stay because I'm comfortable here. I like it here. I like the student environment. I like this. I like this. So they'll stay.
Yep, exactly right. And I think focusing on continuing that culture, no matter who comes in, is important as well, right? Not changing your standard, regardless of what your roster looks like. And I think the kids really respect that, and the players that are in your program that have kind of done those things as young guys respect it as well.
Um, so being a head coach, you're not going to be play calling anything like that. How much hands off does a head coach be with their coordinator? Some are very hands on, they're whatever. With your staff, how off are you and kind of letting them do their thing?
I think I got a pretty good balance, right? I think I've hired really good guys that are experts in their particular positions, and so I want to make them feel like they have autonomy and that they're doing things that they want to do. But at the end of the day, when things aren't the way they need to be or the way that I see them to be, we're always going to discuss it and make sure that we can leave that meeting on the same page in a way that's going to be the best for our program. So I'm pretty hands off, but I'm very hands on, if that makes sense.
Yep. Yep.
I think we're going to really all be on the same page. We talk a lot about communication, and however, anytime you have a lack of communication, it just leads to confusion, right? And so we want to make sure that we have as little confusion as possible in our program. So making sure that the schemes are what we want them to be or what we envision them to be are really important to me. But at the end of the day, I'm going to make sure that those guys in every one of my positions feels like they're the ones really developing that as well.
In your career, you've been a head coach before. You coached there for a little bit. You take a year off from Idaho, come back. Who would you say kind of helped you? Because this was the job, right? This wasn't just any job. It was like the job. Who kind of helped you form and be ready for this moment to come back and be this person?
Oh gosh, I mean, a lot of people, right? I mean, obviously, I think it starts at home. Like my family, my wife is like the bulldog of our family, and uh, always pushes me to be better. She was the one that was like, "You need to email Terry." Terry Golick is our athletics director, and I was like, no, she'll call me if she's interested, and she's like, "Email Terry." So I emailed Terry, and she emails me right back and tells me, Coach, you were on our short list for no matter what, if you would have emailed me or not. So I threw that back in her face a little bit, but uh, but no, she's definitely been very influential in getting to this point. And there's been a ton of influential coaches along the way. My college coach Jay Losey, who's still fighting in my corner to this day. He helped me kind of get the job over at Oregon State during that time last year, and he's been super influential. Still, just kind of asking him small things like about culture and things like that. I know Jimmy Lake was really integral. I worked with Jimmy at University of Washington, and I know it on paper didn't end great. It was a great culture. He did a
Mhm.
great job of. He really taught me to master the schedule, right? Making sure everybody knows exactly what they're supposed to be doing when they're supposed to be doing it. And I think when you have that, like I just talked about, right, we don't want any confusion. Right? I'm a super organized guy
Mhm.
in that respect. So we've got, schedules and calendars up the yin yang. But anyway, I thought Coach Lake really helped me develop that. Just making sure that everybody knows what they're supposed to be doing, and that way, when something's wrong, I know exactly who to go to. I think that
Right.
was really, really huge. And, obviously working with Coach Eck here at Idaho, kind of him and I felt like we're a huge part of just developing the recruiting strategy here. And I think once he found out after my first year, he kind of asked me, you're gonna have to make a choice. Like, what do you want to do? Like, you could be really good. Do you want to be a head coach again, or do you want to like be the best running backs coach in America? And I kind of said, well, coach, I really do want to be a head coach again. And in that 23 season, he really helped me, right? Where he's giving me a little bit more responsibility, including me on some meetings that not all the assistants were privy to, and making some decisions and asking my opinions about a lot of things that, again, other guys weren't being asked. And so I think he really helped develop me in this particular role probably the most because he sat in this seat. I could call
Mhm.
Coach Eck right now and ask him about something, and he'd call me back within 24 hours. So, um, those are probably the main three that have really kind of shaped where I am today in terms of coaching for sure.
Um, whoops. Oh, I just lost my train of thought. See, I'm getting old. Getting old, you lose your train of thought. Um, with being a head coach, I talk to some people. They feel like it's their responsibility to help their assistants also grow in what they do. Because somebody did that for you, is that something you feel like it's your responsibility too? If a guy's like, "Yeah, my ultimate goal is this," will
100%.
you take those steps?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's the responsibility of the head coach to develop all of their people in their program, right? Assistant coaches, support staff, players. And we talk a lot about that. I want to help our guys get to whatever they want to get to. Our corners coach told me, Coach, I don't ever want to be a head coach. I just want to be the best corners coach I can be. And I said, all right, well, I'll help you do that. And so I think whatever their path is, I definitely want to be an integral part of helping them get to that final destination, whenever that may be.
Yeah, because I've heard stories about how some people are like, "Well, you're abandoning me because you're trying to do this." Like we just talked about, don't use it as a stepping stone. But if they're doing the things the right way, and they're like, "Yeah, my ultimate goal is to hopefully one day be a head coach," but in this moment, I want to be the best linebackers
Yes.
coach I can possibly be.
No, and I think honestly, I've used this in our staff meetings. Like I was in their shoes. I did a good job, and after 2 years, I went to Oregon State. And so I think guys that want to ascend in this profession, if they keep doing the things we're preaching in our program, they'll have an opportunity to do that too. And that's you can never ask a coach to stay at any number of years, but I kind of mention those guys. I'd love to have you for at least two. I think if you can be an assistant coach in a place for 2 years, you just really get a true feeling of what that place is about, how you can help, what your role is. And so, hopefully I can get at least 2 years out of all of my staff this year, because I think I got a really great one.
Um, because of your interview process, you probably interviewed a lot of people. Um, I think we might have talked about this last time. I just feel like there's not as many coaches as there used to be, I think, or people getting into it. I don't know if you guys see that. We see it at the high school level. We always, almost year in and year out, have like two stipends. Like we're offering people, like, here's a stipend. Our stipends are pretty good. It takes us months and months to like get somebody to do it. And it's always, they're outside of our building. They work a real boy. We always call it a real job. They're not a teacher. They're not anything. They do real things. Do you think did you ever see like younger coaches wanting the keys to the kingdom? Like, I want to be an OC, I want to be this, I want to be this very quickly. And it's like, no, you have to put in work somewhere else before you get to this point, right? Because I was an OC at the age of 21 and I thought I knew it all. I was like, I know everything. And I quickly realized, nope, you don't know everything, right? Not like even X's and O's, but like when to call play. Are you one, two steps ahead? Your emotions. If the play goes wrong, are you freaking out? But you got to be one play ahead, right? Like if ball's dropped on the most perfect play you could call, and the quarterback looks at you and you're throwing your paper down, and they get now they're going to get flustered. I took years off being an OC. Now I'm back. Happened today. We dropped 3 straight passes, and I could have lost it. And I was like, "Hey, that's a good ball. That's a good route. We just got to catch it." Like it's a lot different. So I just don't know if you're seeing coaches wanting to move up too fast, or there's not as many in the pool as there used to be.
Well, I don't think there's any lack of guys that want to do it. I've obviously, as a young guy, like you said, you know everything once you've learned it.
Yep.
And
Yeah. Yep.
so I do think there is still that young guy wanting to be an OC or the head coach probably sooner than they are ready to be.
Hmm.
But at the same time, I do still see there's still young guys out there that want to develop. There's still young guys out there that don't think they know everything and want to learn more. And
Hmm.
I've been really lucky in the positions that kind of our lower level positions to hire guys like that. Actually, some guys I recruited out of high school at a different place, and so those relationships matter. And so I think finding those guys is critical, right? Guys that do want to keep getting better, guys that don't think they know everything. And I think if you're a young coach listening to this podcast, that's a great lesson to be learned, right? Learn as much as you can, but trust me, the minute you think you know it all, you might as well stop coaching.
Oh, coach, I thought I knew it all. I was like, I'm finally the OC. Look at me. I see a play that Idaho did on Saturday. I want to put this play in. Let's add it in. So Tuesday we add it, and now the kid, I'm trying to call it on Friday nights. Well, coach, you only called it like 3 times during the week. Why are you calling it now? And I'm like, just run it. Or like, how could you not read this RPO? How could you not do this? And then I leave. go to a different school, and I quickly realized I was like, oh, wait a minute, this guy does something different. He does something different. I'm learning, stuff like that. Now that I'm 34, 35, I have to act like I know it in front of the kids. Like, this is why we're doing it. You have to act like it. But I'm constantly learning. We just talked to North Central's football coaches, talked to their OC, and I was like, oh, yeah, this is interesting. You're taking notes. And I'm like, this is what I'm stealing. This is what I'm stealing. I'm like, I don't know nothing in those
Right.
moments. I'm like, I know nothing.
Right.
But then they're like, Steve, you can't run this. We're a national championship Division III team. You're not running this at the high school level. And I was like, okay, you got a point there. I'm not going to do that. One part of your job is to bring attention to Idaho. I think you guys have done a good job social media wise. What's your plan of like bringing attention to Idaho to get all eyeballs that you can on them? Or like, what's that the outreach? What's the plans of attack for that?
Well, honestly, I think the best way to get eyes is just you got to go win games, right? I think people love a winner, and Idaho fans are no different. And I think once you have your fan base enthralled, they feel like it's really important. They start talking about it, and then that's when that buzz really starts getting going, right? And I think our players are very cognizant of this as well. So the daily work that they're putting in right now in the summer matters, and so I think that they're doing a good job continuing to get their followings excited about it. But ultimately, you got to go win in the fall.
Um, so to slowly end it, 'cause I know you're a busy guy, how do we feel about our season? You're in the seat, you got the team ready, you got your coaches in place, working out, going in. How do we feel about this Idaho team into 2025?
I feel cautiously optimistic. I think when you look at our roster, I think we've got talent. I don't think we're going to be just out talented in any of our 12 football games. We've got a very good schedule with winnable games on it. Our offensive line is very strong. We've got three running backs I think are really capable of being all conference players. We've got a transfer quarterback that I think is ready to really flourish as the full-time starter. And a bunch of guys on defense that are hungry, right? We've got some guys that have some veteran guy, kind of a good mix of veteran guys, really kind of waiting their turn, and then some transfer guys that really came to Idaho because they want to win. They know that we have an opportunity to be a playoff caliber team, and so what I definitely think you're going to see this year from Idaho is a team that's physical, right? That plays with great effort and doesn't beat themselves.
Yeah.
We don't want the Vandals beating the Vandals.
What's one of your favorite standard culture phrases that you brought with you to Idaho this year?
Can't cheat the grind, man.
Ooh, I love
Can't
it.
you just can't you can't cheat it, man. We talk about a lot of the football gods see everything, right? Everybody loves football, but football does not love everybody, right?
Hmm.
Football loves the guys that are really devoted to it, that are dedicated to their crafts, and it doesn't guarantee you success, but not doing it guarantees you failure. I tell you that much. And
I'm
so I
writing
think,
that down.
yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about that. You just can't cheat the grind, man. You can try your best, and you can, think you can duck it, but you can't. You're never going to be able to cheat
I literally just wrote that down. I'm going to text our head coach right now. Get that a sign made and put in the weight room. Let's get it
it.
made.
No doubt, no doubt.
Because I stole Coach Leach's on mine. Is be a team, be the most excited to play, be the best at doing your job. I stole that. It's on all my offensive sheets. The one I have for our 7-on-7 tournament, it's right above all my pass
Oh,
plays.
that's
It's
awesome. That's awesome.
when I meet with the team, if I present it up, that's the first thing on there. And I don't have to say it. I won't say it all the time. I want them to see it, but I don't have to say
Sure.
it, but it's there.
Oh yeah.
Uh, Anything with our coaches, I share my install. I share this. It's up there, and I know it's Mike Leach's. I stole it. I know, but I'm not smart enough to come up with my own cool thing, so I stole it. Um, but then I say other phrases to the team. Like I'm going to say that tomorrow, or Thursday as we go into our weekend. I might say that to them. Hey, these guys that aren't here, they're cheating the grind right now. They're not here. They're
Cheat and
not.
grind, man.
I am stealing that. Well, Coach, I appreciate your time coming on here. Awesome. Uh, I'm still waiting on that Idaho gear. I'm letting you
I
know, but
gotta get you. So I think it might be an NCAA violation if I ever have to recruit any of your kids. It's been the only holdup about sending you your gear right now.
Coach, I have nobody for you. I'm sorry to tell you. No, Coach, I appreciate you. I'll be watching Idaho as much as I can, if I
Awesome,
can
man.
this year.
Hey, well, we've got good luck to you this season too, Coach. Hopefully, you guys can have another winning season.